Welcome to Pushback. I'm Aaron Maté. Haitian President Jovenel Moïse is facing a wave of popular protest as he tries to cling to power. Moïse's term was supposed to expire earlier this month, but he says he really belongs in office for another year. In response, Haitians have taken to the streets in protest, and Moïse has cracked down, repressing demonstrations and rounding up opposition figures as well as a top judge. Although Haitians have taken to oppose Moïse's power grab, he does have one powerful ally. In Washington, the Biden administration has backed Moïse's claim that he can stay in office for another year, and even downplayed the scale of the protests against him. The Biden administration's support for Jovenel Moïse is in line with U.S. policy going back 2 centuries. For a long time, the U.S. has stood against popular movements in Haiti and in lockstep with right-wing forces. Well, joining me is Dahoud Andre. He is a Haitian radio host and activist. Dahoud Andre, welcome to Pushback.
Thank you, Aaron. Greet you and your audience.
So for people who have not been following what's been happening in Haiti, it hasn't gotten so much attention. Can you catch us up on what is behind the protests we're seeing right now?
Well, for some of us, Aaron, Jovenel Moïse never really had a mandate. Jovenel Moïse is a product of fraudulent elections that happened they were so bad in 2015, they had to be thrown out. They were done again in 2016. And to give you an example, even the electoral council that did this sham election, they say that in this country of 12 million people, only about 500,000 people voted for Jovenel Moïse. So this is someone that I'm a part of an organization called Comocoda. That's the Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti. We've always used that fact as the basis to say that Jovenel Moïse is not the illegitimate president of our country, Haiti. In 2010, the year of the earthquake, the Democratic administration, U.S. administration of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and the Clintons, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State at the time, and I cannot not mention Bill Clinton, who Hillary had installed as head of the Earthquake Reconstruction Committee. All of them, they colluded to have a fraudulent election to place a degenerate, a man named Michel Martelly, Sweet Mickey, his stage name. People can look him up and see what his record was. But this was the person that the U.S. administration had handpicked to lead Haiti. And we have to say we call for the freedom, the liberation of Julian Assange. Because of his work at WikiLeaks, he allowed us to see the emails, inner workings coming up to this election and what happened afterwards, where you had Hillary Clinton congratulating her staff on doing such great elections. They're the ones who did this election. They picked the candidates that went to the second round, Milan Maniga and Michel Martelly. They called them the MMS. And they also picked the results. They decided what the results were. And Michel Martelly himself, with the collaboration of the U.S. again, handpicked Jovenel Moïse that no one knew. They claimed he was a banana farmer, which was false. They claimed he was an entrepreneur, which was false. But they set up the scenario that they needed to set up and they installed him in power. So from the time Martelly was in power, there have been huge protests going on in Haiti, be it around the illegitimacy of these two individuals, around the corruption that was going on, to the point that Martelly assassinated a judge. Serge Joseph is his name, who was presiding over a corruption trial for his wife, Sophia Martelly, and his son, Olivier Martelly. So the people were protesting as well over jailings. People were, peasant leaders were put in jail, such as Mathilde Eslami, who was the vice president of COPI, Combit Paysan Ilavache. Ilavache is a island off the coast of Okai that the Martelly people and the U.S. Administration decided they wanted this island to be a tourist haven, and they were selling land on this island that was occupied by Haitians. And the president of COPI, eventually Macdonald Lene, was assassinated himself by the Martelly government. So protests never stop. When Jovenel took over, protests continue. Here in New York, in our organization, Komokoda, we protested Jovenel Moïse's installation on February 4th, 2017, before he was imposed on our people as president of the country. Huge protests happened in July 6th and 7th, 2018, when Jovenel tried to impose IMF austerity measures in the country. And for a while, Jovenel went into hiding. So now the present season and protests have not stopped since then, what they call the pays lock, where the country was completely locked down by the people. Now, what Jovenel has done with the support of the U.S. administration is remobilize the Haitian army, parts of the Haitian army, certainly not the same people who were there before. He's organized the police that's there, which was already a police force that was created, funded, armed by the US government and trained by the Canadians, into death squads. And gangs are federated in the country. There is something called the G9. It's a group of 9 gangs in different popular neighborhoods. And these are young men who, of course, have nothing, no jobs. There's no schooling. There's nothing for them to do. So the government, people in power, put guns, like machine guns, in their hands. And there have been multiple massacres in the popular neighborhoods. This is the places that are always form the bulk of demonstrations to oust Martelly, to oust Jovenel Moïse, to stand with the popular movement, especially President Aristide, who is still very popular in the country. And of course, as you said, he has the U.S., United States. He has the United Nations, I cannot say he has. The U.S. has the UN, the OAS, and they used to call themselves the Friends of Haiti. But after the earthquake, they formed into this cabal. It's like a union called the Core Group. The Core Group in Haiti, this is the representatives of the UN Security, UN Secretary General, who's a puppet of the United States, the representatives of the OAS, that Fidel Castro called the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the United States, the ambassadors of the United States, Canada, France, European Union, Germany, Spain, and Brazil. So this is what has allowed Jovenel Moïse and Martelly to stay in power. And right now, this is the reason he is still there. So for us, for many of us in the opposition to the US policy in Haiti, Jovenel Moïse never had a mandate, but a part of the resistance of the opposition in Haiti, they are going by the constitution, a constitution that was amended by Michel Martelly that says that his mandate was to end February 7th. And Jovenel Moïse says, no, it's 5 years. He came on in 2017, so he's going to give up power in 2022. The reality is Jovenel Moïse knows so well what's in this constitution that they are using that last year he disbanded the parliament by the same rules that people are saying, the opposition is saying he must leave right now. So it was good for the parliament to get rid of the parliament, but it's not good for him. What we believe is that Jovenel Moïse has no intention to go anywhere. Jovenel Moïse is not going to be able to hold he says in April there will be a referendum and a new constitution, that what's coming out of this proposal right now is that he will be able to run for a consecutive mandate. So, we're looking at it is that Jovenel Moïse is planning to have another term and to keep power as long as he can, as long as his handlers, the people who are backing him up, Martelly called them the heavyweights, because Martelly said he doesn't care about protests in the streets of Haiti so long as the heavyweights support him. So long as the heavyweights support him, Jovenel Moïse plans to stay in power. Another point that I'd like to make around that is, unfortunately, many people, Haitians in and out of Haiti, especially out of Haiti, were deluded into thinking that Jovenel Moïse was a puppet of Donald Trump, whereas the reality is that Jovenel Moïse is a puppet of the United States government. As I said before, Martelly was installed by Barack Obama, Joe Biden administration with Hillary Clinton as their Secretary of State. Jovenel Moïse, the election that he supposedly won was rigged under the same Democratic administration of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. So Joe Biden is a friend of puppets, US puppets all over the world, and folks watching this program certainly know what he said that he did in Ukraine to get, a prosecutor handling the case of his son fired. So we understand why Edward Price at the State Department 2 Fridays ago, 2 Fridays ago, Friday the 5th of February, made the statement on behalf of the Biden administration that Jovenel Moïse's term will end on February 7, 2022, effectively giving Jovenel Moïse the green light to arrest a Supreme Court judge. Because in your opening you said a judge. This is a Supreme Court judge that Jovenel Moïse arrested on the 7th. In his bed. He was asleep in his bed Saturday the 6th to the 7th, and a death squad, military armed gangs in and out of uniform, broke into the house and arrested this man, Ivikel Dabrizil, along with they said 23 other people.
And the judge has since been released, but the damage.
He was released, yes, of course.
But the damage has been done with, as you said, Ned Price siding with Moïse and saying that he can stay in office for another year. Let me ask you, you mentioned before the WikiLeaks cables and what they revealed about U.S. meddling in Haiti. Another major revelation was that the U.S. fought very hard to depress the Haitian minimum wage, telling Haitians basically to live on $3 a day. What are some of the things that the U.S. has gotten from Jovenel Moïse in return for its support?
The biggest thing has been Jovenel Moïse joining, on behalf of Haiti, joining what is called the Lima Group. This is the cabal of puppet governments in the Americas who declared that, Juan Guaido was president of Venezuela. Now, this is an especially shameful incident, and for many of us in Haiti, this is the most shameful act that U.S. puppet Jovenel Moïse has done. Even the puppet Maté, he wore a red shirt, to go to Venezuela to Hugo Chavez's funeral. You understand? So for Jovenel Moïse to betray Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro was a shameful act for Haitians, to the point that our organization, Komokoda, we held a protest, a solidarity protest in front of the Venezuelan consulate in New York City before it was taken over by the U.S. and handed over to Guaido's people. Now, the relationship between Venezuela and Haiti is as old as Haiti, because when Jean-Jacques Dessalines liberated our country in 1804, the next year, Francisco Miranda, who was struggling alongside Simon Bolivar, came to Haiti in search of support for liberation movement. And Jean-Jacques Dessalines gave aid and support to Bolivar, to Miranda. Later on, Bolivar himself came and lived in Haiti for some time. The flag of Gran Colombia, that the area was called at the time, that was to be liberated by Bolivar. So we understand that the first flag was sewn in Jacmel, a coastal town, city in Haiti. Now, and relationships have been very strong over the years, even when you had puppet governments, U.S. puppet governments in Venezuela, and a coup happened, the first coup against President Aristide in 1991, September 30th, 1991. Venezuela opened its doors to welcome President Aristide. So, and of course, Hugo Chavez, when he came to power, the solidarity, I don't know what we can say about the relationship between Hugo Chavez and Haitians. And the one time he visited Haiti, it was like a euphoria in the streets. Like he had to get out of his car and against the wishes of his security and walk from the airport to the slums of Cité Soleil with the Haitian people who came to welcome him. Now, you know that when President Préval was in power...
René Préval, who was Aristide's successor.
Yes. The second time, of course, 2007, Préval, despite strong U.S. pressure, Préval joined the movement that allowed Haiti to be a part of the Petro-Caribe program. This is a program where Venezuela sold, we don't want to say gave, but we're going to say sold fuel to Haiti, among other countries, at prices that were much less than the going rate on the international market. And Haiti only had to pay half of the money for this fuel. In addition, the other half was for a long-term loan. I don't remember if it was exactly maybe 25 years loan that was, I think, at 1% interest. And the idea was for Haiti to use this money for the development of our people, to build schools, hospitals, infrastructure, to get the country out of the what your president called the shithole reality that Haiti exists in as a result of U.S. and France French policy. Now, I should tell you, in addition to all of this, to all of this support, Cuba had, since President Aristide was leaving power in 1995, 96, Preval came on. Now, President Aristide restored diplomatic relations with Haiti, and under President Preval's first government, Cuba, I'm sorry, yeah, under President Preval's first government, Cuba started sending medical brigades to Haiti to help with health, because I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's something like 25 doctors, that's today, for every 100,000 people in Haiti. So this was a dire situation. And with Venezuela's support, Cuba was able to get resources to help people in the field of health in Haiti. So when Jovenel Moïse turned his back, and I should say he did this, he recognized Juan Guaido just a couple of months after he had personally traveled to Venezuela to ask for a loan, multi-million-dollar loan from President Maduro.
Yeah.
That Maduro gave to him, of course,
And Jovenel Moïse was also implicated in corruption around this, right? He personally profited from stealing
not
this.
Not just him, but certainly the Maté administration squandered, it's about $2 billion that Haiti still had from that other half of the Petro-Caribe money that was absolutely stolen, and there are the court in Haiti that investigated this, implicated not just Maté, people in Maté's government, but Jovenel Moïse through many, many different programs that Jovenel Moïse had, something called Agritrans, that he had something, money to build roads. He even signed some of these contracts as an engineer. And Jovenel Moïse is not an engineer. Jovenel Moïse, never went to school for engineering, but this document, this contract that he signed with the Maté government as an engineer is there. So since before he came to power, many of us, we said this is a crook. This is somebody who's laundering money. This is someone who he was brought by Maté, and since we know what Maté is and what Maté represents, we cannot give any value to someone that Maté is bringing on. So a lot of protests in Haiti have happened during his term after these reports were issued. And he's someone that he has no credibility in the country. And as you said, the only ally, the sure, certain ally that Jovenel Moïse has, and the only reason he is still there in Haiti is because of the United States, who continues to furnish Jovenel Moïse with guns, with tear gas, with a hardware for his three armed units: the police force, the army, the remobilized army, and the street gangs that he controls.
The U.S. has also sent Haitians back to Haiti, people seeking asylum in the U.S. There was a plane that included several children that landed back in Haiti recently. As I understand it, the Biden administration has since suspended these deportation flights to Haiti. What can you tell us about that?
Well, not exactly. He's not exactly suspended them. Now, and it's very interesting that this happened. Again, many people in the United States, and some in Haiti too, I suppose, imagine that U.S. policy might be different from Trump to Biden or from Obama to Trump. And the reality of these deportations you're talking about shows exactly the racism that, from the first U.S. immigration laws against the Chinese, to what's going on today, nothing has changed. Joe Biden, just like Donald Trump, would prefer immigrants from Sweden. I think that's where he said he wanted. Was it Sweden or some other Nordic country? I don't remember. But it's the same policy. Now, as soon as Joe Biden took power, we know that Trump was, we call him a guomoso. Guomoso is like someone who's just vulgar, you know? But for us, something we've always said at Komokoda and in our activities is that Donald Trump follows in line of every US president since George Washington. Someone who believes that the United States is and should be on top of the whole world. Every country needs to be on their knees in front to kneel before the United States. Every country needs to follow the dictates of the United States. And that's not different from Bill Clinton to Barack Obama to George Bush to Donald Trump and to Joe Biden, who's been, as we know, in Washington since, I understand, more than 47 years now. Now, we've played this clip on our radio program it's a 1994 clip of Joe Biden in an interview with Charlie Rose, where Joe Biden says, there's a newspaper editor that sent a journalist to speak to him. Why is Joe Biden so concerned about Bosnia and not Haiti? And he explains that, Bosnia is of concern, but to U.S. interests. But if Haiti were to sink, if the Caribbean Sea would open up and Haiti would sink to the bottom, nothing it wouldn't hurt the interests of the United States.
If Haiti, a god-awful thing to say, if Haiti just quietly sunk into the Caribbean or rose up 300 feet, it wouldn't matter a whole lot in terms of our interest.
So this is racism. And in reality, for many of us, this is more racist and more inhumane than Donald Trump calling Haiti and these other African, Latin American countries a shithole. It's a message to our liberal friends who, vilify Donald Trump while they embrace someone like Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Bill Clinton. Now, Joe Biden is supposed to have signed a decree, executive order, they call it over here, to stop deportations until policy is reviewed for the first 100 days. But what we understand is that there was some a 70-year-old policy health related U.S. law that allowed what's his name, Donald Trump to continue the deportations. And it's this same rule that Joe Biden is using, Joe Biden's administration is using to continue these deportations you speak of. Supposedly, it's about 1,800 people from Haiti, supposedly to protect them against COVID-19, who are at the border, Mexican border or some whatever, so that are in line to be deported during these 100 days of Joe Biden. So this week we understand that there were days after this plane load of people, including they said 72 people, including more than 20 children and babies who were sent back to Haiti, that these people are scheduled to be deployed. There were days this week that 2 planes were sent to Haiti in one day, deporting people, Haitians. And there are people, there's this case of this young man who was in the news a lot, who Trump tried to deport the Tuesday before the Wednesday that he handed over power. He was taken off the plane on Tuesday, and within days of Joe Biden taking power, that same week, he was sent to Haiti. This young man, Pierre-Louis is his name, was not born in Haiti. I understand he was born in either Guadeloupe or Martinique. Oh no, I'm sorry, Saint Martin, he was born. 2 Haitian parents, but had been living here for many, many years in the United States. And despite the fact that he was not born in Haiti, he was not a Haitian citizen, Joe Biden deported him to Haiti. So we want people to understand that in Haiti, as Haitians, we don't expect any changes to U.S. policy with regard to immigration, with regard to violence in Haiti, with regard to garbage like Jovenel Moïse, from Trump to Joe Biden. We believe it's the same policy that is happening.
I wanted to ask you more about President Aristide, the former president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. As you said, he's been overthrown twice in 2 U.S.-backed coups, the first in 1991 under George H.W. Bush, shortly after Aristide was elected in Haiti's first free elections, the second coup in 2004 under George W. Bush. Since returning to Haiti, am I correct to say that Aristide has been relatively quiet politically, or is that missing something?
He is very vocal, I should say.
Okay.
The fact is, since he's returned, he's restored his university that is full of young Haitians studying for different things. His foundation is fully functional. The political party, Famille Avalas, is functioning. And he has a radio station that is called Radio Timoun, Radio Tele Timoun. There's a television branch as well that is online. People can listen to it, and every day there's programming, what I can say, they call it decolonizing the minds of Haitians. So while President Aristide himself might speak once or twice a year, his radio program, his voice is connecting with the lives of Haitians inside and outside of Haiti every day. As a matter of fact, I listen to it all the time, and there are radio stations in New York, different parts of the diaspora, and Haiti as well, different parts of Haiti, who rebroadcast. They relay the programming of Radio Timoun. So there are some people who want to say, he's under house arrest or he's been ordered by the United States not to speak. But I can tell you that he remains the most popular politician in Haiti right now, to the displeasure of many people. And the country connects with very well the poor, I should say, the poor within the elite and within some people who like to think of themselves as middle class, who are looking for favors from the United States. Of course, they know that the United States hates President Aristide with a passion. Again, I have to tell you that the two coups happen under these administrations that you speak of, the two Bushes, father and son. But when it was time for President Aristide to come back in 1994, the administration of Bill Clinton imposed, such inhumane conditions. We saw Bill Clinton apologizing for imposing on President Aristide conditions that destroyed the primary agricultural product of Haiti. This is the rice. Haitians who can eat rice every day. And Bill Clinton said he did that to the benefit of Arkansas rice farmers. That's the reality of Bill Clinton.
It has not worked. It's maybe been good for some of my farmers in Arkansas, but it has not worked. It was a mistake. It was a mistake that I was a party to. I am not pointing the finger at anybody. I did that. I have to live every day with the consequences of the lost capacity to produce a rice crop in Haiti to feed those people because of what I did, nobody else.
Thank you for correcting me there. I'm happy to hear that about Aristide. I didn't realize that. And so pardon my Western or, Northern ignorance. And it's funny, you mentioned the WikiLeaks cables. It reminds me of another very telling one, which was a cable from U.S. officials inside of Haiti, which included the header, Aristide movement must be stopped. And part of what they were so worried about is they say, quote, that there was a poll that showed, quote, that Aristide was still the only figure in Haiti with a favorability rating above 50%.
And it's still the same today, Aaron.
Yeah.
And that is the problem. You understand? That is the problem. This was the problem for the United States in the first occupation of Haiti in 1915 to 1934. The United States could not get Haitians to play baseball. And this disturbed them. You understand? It's like there is a Haitian historian named Jacques Casimir that folks should read. And also they should read Michel Wolf-Trujillo's book, Silencing the Past, that Amanda Gorman said she was reading at the time she performed for Joe Biden. But Jacques Casimir writes very interesting things about the gramunité, like I don't want to say humanity because it's not humanity. It's the will of people. He explained that just because you are enslaved does not mean that you are a slave. The slave is the person who accepts this identity, who accepts this condition. And what was going on in Saint-Domingue, the French colony of Saint-Domingue, before our ancestors liberated it, militarily liberated it. We were not gifted freedom in Haiti. It is that these white colonists, they couldn't sleep with both eyes closed because they understood that it was a powder keg, that at any moment it would explode. And this is the situation of Haiti today. I do a weekly, twice a week radio program in New York that is called Héritier Papa Dessalines. It means the heirs, the children of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, our liberator. And that's the condition is that we have today. The United States has done everything imaginable to get the people of Haiti to turn away from President Aristide. That the people understand is, I would say one of the very, very few politicians, he was not a politician, that despite, whatever difficulty, problem you could have with something that happened, that embraces their misery, that wants to get them out of the shithole reality that, and the audience will excuse me for keep repeating this. It's like I was watching a latest video with some people, some of your friends, with Glenn Greenwald, and he was saying how they refuse, it's like it's a sin to repeat the word nigger in officialdom, But the fact is, this is reality. Haiti, when you look at the reality in Haiti right now, it's like you're a hypocrite if you don't say the word shithole like Donald Trump is said to have said. But in all our protests at Komokoda, we carry a sign that says Haiti is a shithole because the crooks in power are puppets of the US government. And it says Haiti, and we have so many countries with their flags, we say turned into a shithole by France and the United States, the case of Haiti. For El Salvador, turned into a shithole by Spain, and the others by Portugal, by England, by all of these European colonial powers. So the fact is, we understand the reality of Haiti, and the Haitian people fight every day to change this reality. But what the US, the United States, people over here need to understand that missionaries going to Haiti is not going to change that reality. It might, lift you up, make you think that, you're doing something good while you're investing in Wall Street, in companies that, further this condition that creates a need for you. Like you might be part of an NGO and you build a little school, a little clinic somewhere, but that's not going to change the reality of people who are oppressed in Gaza or in Zimbabwe, anywhere else. What's going to change it is when people over here in the United States, in these centers of power, understand that this condition is intrinsically tied to the things that they want. The money, the lifestyle, the electricity 24/7, I know there are poor people, poverty in the know too well about poverty in the United States and these other places, where, you have people sleeping in the streets practically outside the White House over here. But the disparity, like Bezos, Bill Gates, you know, having all of this money, you know, that what's his name, the other Open Society,
Soros.
Soros, with all of their money, ill-gotten money, ill-gotten resources, and they're doing these pet projects, you know, to bring water to what they're calling the third world. This is not going to change anything. And I think that for the long running of the world, of the planet, of people, you know, I think the people in the centers of power have to take some level of responsibility to say that we understand this is being done in our name.
Dahoud Andre, radio host, activist with the Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti. Thank you. And let me also thank our mutual friend, Margaret Kimberly of Black Agenda Report, who connected us. So thank you, Margaret, for making this happen. And I urge anyone who follows the Grayzone, if you don't know Black Agenda Report, check that out as well. Dahoud, thank you very much.
And we thank Margaret as well. Thank you very much.